Some wounds do not bleed. They wait quietly for a room full of familiar faces. A father stands smaller than memory, holding himself together for a child who trusts him. Then steadiness arrives where shame once lived, and something fragile learns it may be allowed to stay. Stay for the quiet turning. Let the evening carry you. The building had not changed. That was the first thing he noticed as he stood just inside the doorway, the noise of the room folding around him. The same low ceiling, the same varnished floors dulled by years of shoes, the same smell of coffee, and something reheated. It was as though time had paused here, waiting for people to return and discover what it still remembered. He adjusted the strap of the small backpack on his shoulder and looked down. His son stood close to his leg, fingers curled into the fabric of his coat. Too quiet already. The boy's eyes moved carefully across the room, reading faces without understanding them, sensing only that this place carried weight his father had not explained. "It's just for a little while," he murmured, bending slightly. "Then we'll go." The boy nodded. He always did. They moved farther in. Old classmates clustered in small circles, laughter arriving in bursts, names being called out with surprise that felt rehearsed. Someone recognized him, waved vaguely, then returned to their conversation. He felt neither welcomed nor dismissed, just observed, briefly, then set aside. He had told himself he came for closure, that it was time to stop avoiding rooms like this, that it would be good for his son to see where he came from, even if the child wouldn't remember it later. But standing there, he wondered if that had been an excuse. Some quieter part of him had wanted to test whether the past still had teeth. It did. He heard her voice before he saw her. It carried easily, trained by years of being listened to. When she turned, recognition crossed her face. Not surprise, but assessment. Her smile sharpened. "Well," she said, approaching, eyes flicking briefly to the child. "I didn't expect to see you here." Others turned with her, curiosity waking. He managed to nod. "It's a reunion." She laughed softly, as if that answered something only she had asked. Her gaze moved again to the boy, lingered just long enough to be impolite. "And this must be my son," he said. "How nice," she replied, already distracted. "I didn't realize you had him tonight." The words were mild. That was what made them effective. A few people smiled awkwardly, sensing something without understanding it. Someone asked her about her work, her travels. She answered easily, accomplishment layered into every sentence. The room leaned in. He stood there, shrinking not from her success, but from the familiar way she erased him without raising her voice. No accusation, no anger, just omission, as if he were a footnote she had outgrown. His son shifted, pressed closer. A small hand slipped into his. He tightened his grip slightly, grounding himself. "I should," he began, but the moment had already passed. She had turned away. He felt the heat rise, the old instinct to apologize for existing. He stayed where he was, counting breaths, waiting for the feeling to crest and recede. It always did. Then the room changed. It was not dramatic. No sudden hush, no announcement, just a subtle redirection of attention, like furniture being moved without noise. People straightened. Conversations softened. She entered without hurry, wearing nothing that demanded notice. Her presence was not loud. It was assured. She scanned the room briefly, then her eyes found him. They did not flick away. She approached with the same calm she brought to meetings, to decisions that altered lives quietly. "There you are," she said, as if this was exactly where he was meant to be. He blinked. "I didn't know you. I was invited last minute," she replied. Her gaze lowered to the child. She crouched slightly, not invading space. "Hello." The boy studied her, then nodded once. She straightened. "Would you like to join us?" she asked him. Not the room, not the past. Him. There was no challenge in her tone, no display, just inclusion. Around them, the energy shifted again. Someone greeted her by name. Someone else offered a drink. The conversation reorganized itself without his ex-wife at the center. She watched, unreadable, then smiled thinly and moved on. He felt something loosen in his chest. Not triumph. Relief. Later, as they stood near the edge of the room, the child holding a paper cup of juice, she spoke quietly. "You didn't deserve that." He shook his head. "It's fine." She did not argue. She simply stayed, and for the first time that evening the room stopped remembering him as he once was. The parking lot had emptied by the time they stepped outside. The night air was cooler than he expected, carrying the faint scent of wet pavement and leaves pressed flat by tires. His son walked beside him, quieter than usual, holding the backpack strap with both hands. "You okay?" he asked. The boy nodded, then after a pause, nodded again, as if reassuring himself. They reached his car. He opened the back door first, helping him climb in, buckling the seatbelt with practiced care. Only when the door was shut did he allow his shoulders to sag. "She didn't mean anything," he said, not sure who he was convincing. Before he could open the driver's door, a familiar voice spoke behind him. "You're driving?" He turned. She stood a few steps away, keys in her hand, coat buttoned against the cold. Her car was parked nearby, unassuming, clean, ordinary. "Yes," he said, "it's not far." She studied him for a moment, then glanced at the child through the window. "It's late, and he looks tired." "He is," he agreed. "Let me follow you," she said, "just to make sure you get home." He hesitated. Pride rose automatically, then stalled. There was no pity in her face, no assumption, just quiet practicality. "All right," he said. The drive was uneventful. Streetlights passed in steady intervals. His son leaned his head against the window, eyes half closed. He focused on the road, aware of the other car's headlights behind him, constant but not pressing. His apartment building was small, the kind designed to blend into its surroundings. He parked, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment. The headlights behind him dimmed. "You can wait here," he told his son. "I'll be right back." He stepped out. She had already parked and joined him, hands in her coat pockets. "This is us," he said unnecessarily. "It's nice," she replied, and he believed she meant it. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of detergent and old carpet. He unlocked the door, ushered his son in first. The lights came on softly, illuminating a space that was clean, orderly, and lived in. Shoes lined neatly by the wall. A small table held school papers weighted with a mug. "Go change," he said gently. "I'll get you something warm." The boy disappeared down the hall. She remained near the doorway, taking in details without comment. The worn couch with carefully folded blankets, the framed drawing taped slightly crooked to the wall. "You don't have to," he began. "I know," she said. "I just wanted to see him settled." He filled a mug with milk, warmed it, handed it to his son when he returned in pajamas. The boy accepted it, eyes heavy, then looked at her. "Good night," she said softly. He nodded. "Good night." She watched him disappear into his room, then turned back to the father. "He's a good kid." "He tries," he said, "more than he should." They stood there, the quiet thick but not uncomfortable. "I should go," she said. He walked her to the door. "Thank you. For tonight." She paused, hand on the handle. "You didn't do anything wrong." After she left, he locked the door and leaned against it briefly. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. He listened, waiting for the familiar ache to return. It didn't. The days that followed did not announce themselves as different. They arrived the way days always did, through alarms set too early, toast scraped too thin, shoes searched for under furniture that never moved. If change was happening, it was quiet enough to be mistaken for routine. He noticed her first in the margins of his workday. She did not call him into her office. She did not reference the reunion or the room or anything that might have required him to explain himself. Instead, small adjustments appeared where pressure used to be. Meetings were scheduled within hours he could manage. Deadlines shifted without comment. Once, when he apologized for needing to leave early for a school appointment, she only nodded and said, "Of course." It unsettled him more than resistance would have. He had learned how to push against obstacles. He had learned how to lower his expectations until they fit inside other people's patience. What he had not learned was how to stand still while something eased around him without demanding repayment. At home, His son noticed before he did. The boy's shoulders loosened in the evenings. He spoke more at dinner, not much, but enough to fill the space between bites. He asked questions that had nothing to do with schoolwork. He lingered after bedtime stories, tracing patterns on the blanket, as if waiting for something unnamed to arrive. One evening, while he washed dishes, his son said, "She was nice." He dried his hands slowly. "Who?" "The lady," the boy replied. "From the big room." He nodded. "Yes, she was. She looked at me when I talked." The words landed with unexpected weight. He turned, crouched to the boy's level. "That's important." The boy considered this, then nodded, satisfied. They saw her again a week later. It was not planned. He was late picking his son up from school traffic, an unreturned call, and arrived to find her standing by the gate, coat open, phone tucked away. She did not look out of place there, but she did not look important either. Just another adult waiting. "I hope this is all right," she said when she saw him. "I had a meeting nearby. They asked if anyone could stay a few extra minutes." His son spotted her and waved, tentative but pleased. "Thank you," he said. "I didn't mean to." "It's fine," she replied, already turning her attention to the child. "How was your day?" "Good," the boy said. Then, after a pause, "We had math." She smiled. "That sounds serious." They walked together to the car. The conversation stayed light, anchored in the boy's observations, a loose tooth, a spelling test, a classmate who always forgot their lunch. She listened as if each detail mattered equally. He watched her hands as she gestured, measured, calm. No rings that caught the light, no impatience in her posture. She did not try to impress him. If anything, she seemed careful not to. After that, it became easier to accept her presence. She joined them for coffee once, sitting across from him at a small table by the window while his son worked through homework beside them. She did not offer help unless asked. When she did, it was precise and brief. Another afternoon, she walked with them to the park near his apartment. She sat on the bench, coat folded beside her, watching the boy climb and descend with steady focus. She did not check her phone. She did not fill the silence. He realized then that she understood something he had learned the hard way. That presence was not something you performed. It was something you allowed. They did not talk about the future. They did not name what was forming between them. Instead, the shape of their days shifted slightly, making room where there had been none. One evening, as they stood in the kitchen, he reached for a plate and found her already holding it. Their hands brushed briefly. Neither of them spoke. The moment passed without ceremony, but it stayed. Later, after she left, his son asked, "Is she coming back?" He answered honestly, "I don't know." The boy thought about this, then said, "I hope so." He did not correct him. She did come back, not in a way that suggested decision or intent, but with the natural rhythm of someone whose path had begun to align with theirs. A message here, a pause in the hallway at work that turned into a conversation, an offer to walk with them after school when schedules overlapped. Nothing was named. That seemed important. He remained careful, careful not to assume, careful not to lean. Years of managing alone had trained him to balance without support, to anticipate loss before comfort could form. Even kindness, when extended too easily, made him brace. She seemed to understand this without being told. When she visited the apartment, she never arrived empty-handed, but never with anything extravagant. Bread still warm from a nearby bakery, soup from a place she liked because it reminded her of childhood, though she did not elaborate. Once, a second-hand book she had found by chance, its pages already softened by someone else's hands. She placed things down quietly, as if the home had its own order she did not want to disrupt. His son accepted her presence with a seriousness that surprised him. He watched how she moved through rooms, how she waited her turn in conversation, how she never spoke over him. Trust, for the boy, was not given quickly. It was earned through repetition. One Saturday morning, she sat at the table while they worked through a puzzle. Pieces scattered between them, sunlight stretching across the wood. The boy grew frustrated, pushing his chair back slightly. She did not intervene at first. She watched, letting the moment breathe. When she finally spoke, it was only to say, "Sometimes it helps to step away for a minute." The boy considered this. He stood, walked to the window, then returned. When he found the missing piece a few minutes later, his smile was quiet but full. You noticed the way she smiled, too, without ownership, without claiming the moment. Later, as his son napped, they sat on opposite ends of the couch. Not close enough to touch, close enough to share the silence. He folded laundry. She read. The clock ticked. Outside, a neighbor's door closed softly. "You're good at this," he said eventually, surprising himself. She looked up. "At what?" "Knowing when to step in. And when not to." She closed the book. "I didn't always." The admission hung there, unfinished. He did not press. At work, their interactions remained measured. She never favored him in ways that could be noticed. If anything, she held him to standards she trusted him to meet. He found that he wanted to meet them, not to prove himself, but because she had already decided he could. The line between their worlds blurred gently. One evening, his son fell asleep on the couch while she was there. His head rested against a pillow she had placed without comment. When the boy stirred, she adjusted the blanket instinctively, then froze, as if suddenly aware of herself. "It's all right," he said quietly. She nodded, but her hand lingered for only a moment before she withdrew it. When she stood to leave, she hesitated at the door. "I don't want to overstep." "You haven't," he replied. That was the closest they came to naming anything. After she left, he carried his son to bed, feeling the familiar weight in his arms. As he tucked him in, the boy murmured, half asleep, "She makes the house quieter." He sat there long after the boy's breathing evened out, considering that sentence. Quieter did not mean empty. It meant safe. He realized then that something had already changed. Not because of words exchanged or promises made, but because their days had learned a new shape, one that made space for rest. And for the first time in a long while, he did not feel the need to guard it. The first sign was not dramatic. It arrived folded into an envelope on a Tuesday afternoon, slipped through the mail slot with the rest of the ordinary things. Utility bill, school notice, a letter with his name printed too carefully on the front. He did not open it right away. He placed it on the counter and finished unpacking groceries, lining cans with practiced precision. His son sat at the table, coloring quietly, humming to himself. The sound steadied him. He waited until the boy was absorbed, then turned the envelope over, reading the return address. His ex-wife. The paper inside was brief, formal. She had learned to write that way. It referenced schedules, reassessments, suggested conversations about what was best going forward. Nothing overt, nothing kind. He folded the letter once, then again, and placed it back on the counter. That evening, he moved more slowly. He burned the edges of the grilled cheese, forgot to cut the crusts the way his son preferred. The boy noticed, but did not comment. He ate anyway. Later, after bedtime, he sat alone at the table. The letter open in front of him. The old fear rose, not sharp, but heavy. The fear of disruption, of being examined, of having the fragile balance of their life measured by someone who did not live inside it. When she called him the next day, he let it go to voicemail. At work, he struggled to focus. Numbers blurred. Conversations slipped past him without anchoring. She noticed, of course. She always did. "Walk with me," she said after a meeting. Not a request, not an order. They took the long corridor that overlooked the city. Afternoon light filtered through the glass, flattening the skyline into pale shapes. "You're distracted," she said. He considered deflecting. Habit urged him to minimize. Instead, he told the truth, stripped of commentary. "My ex-wife reached out. About my son." She stopped walking. Not abruptly, but decisively. "Is he safe?" "Yes," he said quickly. "That's not the question." She nodded once. "What is?" he exhaled. "Whether my life is appropriate." The word felt small and humiliating even as he said it. She looked at him for a long moment. Whose standards? He did not answer. That evening, he canceled dinner plans with her. He framed it as exhaustion, as needing quiet. She accepted without argument. That unsettled him too. The days that followed carried a subtle distance. He did not pull away completely. He still showed up to work, still exchanged brief messages, but he reduced the overlap between their lives. No shared walks, no evenings at the apartment, no casual presence that could be misinterpreted. He told himself it was temporary, protective. His son felt it anyway. "Is she busy?" the boy asked one night, stirring his cereal more than necessary. "Yes," he said. "Very." The boy nodded, then said nothing more. But the house changed. The quiet returned, heavier than before. When she finally came to the apartment again, it was at his invitation, careful and deliberate. She arrived empty-handed this time. They sat across from each other at the table. No preamble. "I don't want to put you in a position," he said, "where my choices complicate your life, or his." She listened without interrupting, hands folded loosely in front of her. "My ex-wife has a way of reframing things," he continued. "I don't want my son caught between interpretations." She considered this. "Are you asking me to step back?" He swallowed. "I think I'm telling you I might need to." Silence stretched between them. He braced himself for disappointment, for persuasion, for something sharp enough to justify the withdrawal. Instead, she said, "I won't argue with your instinct to protect him." He looked up. "But I need you to understand something," she added. "Distance can protect. It can also teach him that care disappears when it's questioned." The words were gentle. That was what made them difficult. "I don't know how to balance this," he admitted. "I do," she said quietly, "but it took me a long time." She stood, smoothing her coat. "I won't push, but I won't vanish either. You don't have to decide tonight." After she left, he sat alone, the weight of the choice settling deeper. He watched his son sleep, chest rising evenly, hand curled around the edge of the blanket. Protection, he realized, was not always about removal. Sometimes it was about staying visible despite the risk, and he was not sure yet which courage that required. He did not respond to the letter right away. Days passed. The envelope remained where he had placed it, untouched, as if movement might give it more authority than it deserved. Life continued around its school mornings, packed lunches, the quiet rhythm of evenings. But something inside him stayed alert, waiting. The decision did not arrive all at once. It formed slowly, through small recognitions. One morning, his son lingered by the door before school, backpack already on. "Is she coming again?" he asked, carefully neutral. He considered answering the way he always had, softening uncertainty, shielding him from complexity. Instead, he said, "I don't know yet. But if she does, it's because she wants to, not because she has to." The boy nodded, absorbing this. "I like that." That afternoon he replied to the letter. Brief, clear. He agreed to talk, but set boundaries without apology. He did not justify his routines, his work, his support system. He wrote only what was true. When he sent it, his hand shook, then steadied. He asked her to meet him that evening, not at the apartment, not at work. They chose a small cafe halfway between, the kind of place that did not expect anything from the people who sat there. They arrived separately, sat across from each other. The table between them was bare except for 2 cups cooling slowly. "I'm not asking you to fix anything," he said, "and I'm not asking you to wait." She nodded. "I wasn't expecting either." "I've spent a long time stepping back," he continued, "from rooms, from people, from things that might be taken away. I thought that was how I kept him safe." "And now?" she asked. "And now I'm not sure what that teaches him." She did not answer immediately. She wrapped her hands around the cup, not drinking. "Staying doesn't mean you stop protecting him," she said. "It means you let him see what care looks like when it's questioned and stays." He held her gaze. "This isn't simple." "No," she agreed, "but it can be steady." When they left the cafe, nothing had changed outwardly. No promises made, no future outlined, but something internal had settled, like a weight redistributed rather than removed. That night, he told his son the truth. Not everything, Just enough. She's still part of our lives, he said. And if that ever changes, we'll talk about it. The boy thought for a moment, then said, "Okay." That was all. A week later, she returned to the apartment. Not as before. More carefully, as if aware of the trust being rebuilt in real time. They cooked together. Simple food. The boy set the table, serious about his task. When a glass tipped and spilled water across the surface, no one rushed. They cleaned it together, laughing softly. Later, as the boy worked on homework, she stood beside him, pointing to a line he had missed. Her hand hovered near his shoulder, then rested there briefly, lightly. He did not flinch. He watched them from the doorway, understanding something without needing to name it. This was not about choosing her over fear. It was about choosing visibility over disappearance. And for the first time, he stayed in the room without shrinking. Home did not announce itself all at once. It emerged quietly through repetition. Mornings became easier. Not faster, but steadier. The boy learned where her mug belonged on the counter. She learned which cabinet stuck unless lifted slightly. No one remarked on these things. They simply adjusted. She did not move in. Not officially. But she was there often enough that the apartment began to hold her shape. A scarf draped over the chair. A book left face down on the side table. Her presence settled without displacing anything that had already earned its place. At work, their balance remained intact. They were careful. Professional. She did not protect him from difficulty, but she did not expose him either. He felt, for the first time, trusted rather than tolerated. Evenings became shared more often than not. Dinner was simple. Conversations stayed close to the surface, orbiting the boy's day, the weather, the way time moved differently when no one was rushing it. The child changed in small, telling ways. He slept deeper. He stopped checking the door at night. He began to leave drawings on the table without explanation, assuming they would be seen. One afternoon, he handed her a picture without looking at her face. "For you," he said. She accepted it with care, as if it were something breakable. "Thank you." The father watched, chest tight with something close to relief. One evening, as they folded laundry together, she paused, holding a small shirt between her hands. "I don't want to replace anyone," she said. He understood what she meant. "You're not. I just want to be present," she continued. "That's enough," he said. Later, when the boy was asleep, they sat side by side on the couch. No space between them now, but no urgency either. Her hand rested on his arm. He covered it with his own. Outside, a neighbor laughed. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Life continued, unremarkable and intact. He realized then that home was not the absence of fear. It was the presence of people who stayed anyway. Morning arrived without ceremony. Light filtered through the thin curtains in pale bands, settling across the floor in shapes that shifted slowly as the sun climbed. The apartment was still, holding the kind of quiet that came from rest rather than absence. He woke before the alarm as he often did. Habit more than necessity. For a moment he lay still, listening, the low hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a car passing, another breath in the room that was not his own. She slept on her side, facing the window, one hand tucked beneath the pillow. There was no tension in her posture, no readiness to leave. Just sleep, unguarded. He moved carefully, slipping out of bed without waking her. In the kitchen, he started the coffee, the familiar sounds grounding him. He set out 3 mugs without thinking, then paused, noticing what he had done. The realization did not startle him. It felt settled. His son padded in a few minutes later, hair uneven, eyes still heavy. He climbed into a chair, resting his chin on the table. "Morning," his father said. "Morning," the boy replied. "She's still here," the boy added. Not a question. "Yes." The boy nodded, satisfied. He watched the coffee drip, then said, "Can we have pancakes?" His father smiled. "Yes, we can." When she joined them, she did not apologize for sleeping late. She greeted the boy softly, took a mug from the counter, leaned against the doorway as if she belonged there. No one commented on it. They ate together, unhurried. Syrup pooled on plates. The boy talked about a project at school, about something he wanted to build that afternoon. She listened, asked one careful question, then another. He watched them, hands warm around his mug. After breakfast, she washed dishes while he wiped the table. The boy colored on the floor nearby, humming. Nothing was planned. Nothing needed to be. Later, as the morning stretched on, she sat beside him on the couch. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder. It did not shift. Outside, the light moved again, touching the walls, then leaving them. This was not the life he had imagined once. It was quieter, smaller, more real, and it stayed.